I've discussed it before, but I'm generally always way more attracted to games that have a lot of style and pizzazz to them, rather than, say, realism or intense graphics. Like, yeah, sure, I could play Call of Duty, but Splatoon is right there. The more stylized games typically have a lot more fun and interesting gameplay to me anyways, and even when that's not the case, they're still at least more unique to look at. So I try to be on the lookout for games that fit more into that category, both past and newer titles, perking my ears when I find a game that seems to fit the bill. And that's what occurred back in May of 2023 when I discovered a game called The Plucky Squire. This game was actually first announced back in June of 2022, but I didn't find out about it until its first gameplay trailer dropped. I found its thumbnail art intriguing, so I checked it out, and it looked amazing to me. Developed by the studio All Possible Futures, who had worked on games like mainline Pokemon titles and The Swords of Ditto previously, the main gimmick of this title was that your character lived in a storybook, and you played in that storybook, which that alone already looked really cool to me, but additionally, you could pop out of the book and play fully 3D sections as well, which sealed in the deal. It seemed like such an incredibly creative idea. The animation looked gorgeous, music sounded great, it was clear that heavy passion had been poured into this title, and it was to be published by indie game supporter Goliath Devolver Digital, whom I'd first been introduced to with Cult of the Lamb a few months prior, which made things even more promising. This game fully had my attention, and it was meant to release later that year in 2023, although unfortunately got delayed to 2024, which was a bummer, but come on, look at this. This isn't something that you can rush. The Plucky Squire ended up coming out on September 17th, 2024, a little over 2 years after it was first announced. I wasn't able to get the game directly at launch because I was a stupid idiotic broke boy with no money, but I didn't have to wait too long and got it about 2 weeks after it came out. Played and beat it within a week, which, even though the game is only around 8 hours long, is a miracle for me. And I wasn't planning on making a video on it at first, but not only do I think it's a great title and I want to let the world know, this is also the first game where I fully captured every second of my gameplay, and that's an honor. So, here are my thoughts on it. The story of the Plucky Squire is very cookie cutter, but that's not a bad thing, it's just exactly what you'd expect. You play as Jut, who's a plucky squire, I'm sure that was a big surprise, and you live in a land named Mojo with your two buddies Violet and Thrash, and there's the evil Humgrump who tries to take over the land and you have to stop him, yeah. Violet is the thinks they're not good enough and eventually realizes their true potential. Thrash is the has to get over their fears to save the day deal. This world takes place in a children's storybook, and the story follows the beats you'd get in them. I've seen some people say the immense amount of dialogue and how much the game stops you gets tiresome, but I didn't find myself having an issue with it. I get it, the story isn't that interesting, but like I said, it's not bad, and just like any other game, if you want to speed through the dialogue, you can. The story just obviously isn't the main thing that's so special about this game. No, the main appeal of this game to me is the whole storybook thing. I'm sure there's been other games that play with ideas like this, and I'm sure they're just as lovely, but genuinely, wow. You may assume it gets old at some point, or think the fact that there's so often a border around the gameplay is distracting or something, but no, it's genuinely one of the coolest concepts I've seen in a video game. The animation is incredible, and it really does often give off vibes as if you were reading a book and imagining the action animated in your mind. There's occasionally live narration that occurs with text while you're playing, and it's super neat. Just in general, I think they did a wonderful job with this aspect. But of course, the whole storybook thing wasn't just for excellent eye candy, there's also the game's other gimmick of being able to jump outside the pages. You know, the first time I saw this in the game's trailers, even though there was a good bit of 3D outside the pages gameplay shown, I still thought to myself, wow, that looks sick, but it'll probably only be used a few times and just be for minor puzzles and occasional exploration. I stood very corrected. Like, most of the game is still 2D, but it's a way closer margin than you'd probably expect. And regarding the 2D parts, they're pretty good. The Plucky Squire is mostly a puzzle-solving game. There's combat too, and I find it pretty fun, but it's very basic. With the puzzles, you're able to manipulate the wording in your book to create, delete, or alter things in the world, and from there, you'll almost always have to jump out your book too with these portals in order to go on with or finish the task. These parts aren't all too exciting, but that doesn't mean it's bad gameplay. You get certain tools throughout your journey that allows you to mess with the book itself, like turning the pages in order to move objects around and whatnot, and I feel like the puzzles utilize these features well. It's never anything like out of this world, and I've seen some people say the solutions are incredibly basic, but I don't feel that way. Now, I am quite bad at video games, and there were times where I truly had to stare at the screen for multiple minutes in order to understand what to do, but trust me, the puzzles aren't mindless. Some of them are actually really clever with their solutions, in my opinion. There were times where I was like, alright God, please don't have the next screen be a puzzle section, and then I was immediately greeted to damnation. But that's not because these sections aren't fun, I just occasionally wasn't in the mood, although I would often find myself liking them all the same. Besides that, every so often the game will throw a random minigame at you that just shakes up the gameplay. Apparently you can skip them if you want, but I never did. They're nothing special, they're all just parodies of other games. Punch-Out, Magical Drop, Rhythm Heaven. Rhythm Heaven? It's Rhythm Heaven! I'm biased, but these parts made Thrash and his area my favorite of the 2D parts. Other than his though, yeah, I do not care about these, but they're good fun I suppose. Makes for a good change of pace. So that's all dandy, but shockingly to me, the 2D portions aren't even the star of the show in this game. It's actually the 3D sections. There's a few times throughout the journey where instead of just utilizing jumping out the book to mess around with the pages, you actually have to explore the desk in order to acquire certain items. The first time this happens, it's in search of your sword, and you have to stealth around these beetles that your owner Sam collects, and I hated this part. Once again, I'm bad at video games, so... But after that first time, they get a lot better. Oh my god, this game is gorgeous. That statement goes for any time you're walking on the desk, but especially in the dedicated 3D parts. They always do this pan out at the beginning to show you what's up ahead, and it's sick. The amount of detail and items on the desk cannot go underappreciated. It's genuinely beautiful and just as much eye candy as in the 2D parts. Each time you need to come out here, there's always a few characters you'll meet and talk to, and the world out here feels just as alive, if not more alive, than the world in the storybook. You can tell sometimes that the game is struggling to render everything. I mean, I played on PS5 and could notice some frame rate dips occasionally, which is no biggie, although I do wonder how the Switch version fares. But truly, just chef's kiss to the art and animation team, because this is all superb. And the gameplay can match it. These parts of the game are far more platforming focused, which I really enjoy, you know me. And like, I don't know man, they're just super cool. There's such an immense feeling of exploration. Chapter 6 specifically is the highlight of all these sections to me. You have to make your way through 3 different areas of the desk in order to help out this rocket guy retrieve parts for his dad, and he works as a thruster so you can move around way more freely, and it's all space themed, the music is awesome, it looks amazing, it's just pure fun I tell you, and it invokes nostalgic feelings of being a kid and setting up your room to be an adventure for yourself. By no means is this game open world, obviously, but while out here on the desk, I would find myself sometimes straying from actually completing the task at hand and just exploring every possible inch on the desk. There's these scrolls around the game that you'll find hidden, and collecting them gives you an art piece that's added to an in-game gallery. And while they can be found in both areas of the game, they're way more secretive and fun to collect in the 3D parts. Meandering around the desk looking for scrolls or just making your own fun is very similar to a game like Super Mario 64 to me, where at times, instead of trying to actually complete objectives in the levels, you can bum around the castle walls and do random stuff, maybe unlock an extra star if you do the right random thing. It's simple fun. I love the desk objectives and would be kinda bummed out each time they were over. At the end of each of these sections, you have more parodied minigames that you have to do, which again are cool but just filler. They serve as a nice cherry on top to a lovely sundae. If you are skeptical about how much this feature would be utilized like me, trust me, they go pretty far with it. You will not be disappointed. That art gallery I mentioned earlier, by the way, it's kinda neat. I said you get them from finding them in the world, but at least half of them are exclusively sold in a shop that appears throughout the journey. Each scroll you get is official concept art for the game, ranging from early designs of characters, settings, references, the works. It's a little cool, definitely only something I'm ever gonna look at once, but I like when information like this that's typically unknown to the public is open for any player to see. It's just neat. I also don't want to go without giving the soundtrack some appreciation. It's not as enthralling as the graphics are to me, but there's quite a good bit of tunes. There's some ambient tracks for the different times of day you're on the desk, which are lovely, and specifically give me heavy Pop Tropica vibes, if you've ever played that. The title theme is great, Boogie Beach lives up to the name a decent bit, although my favorite track is the one that plays at Trarg Mountain. Now that's a track I'd use in the background of a video. The only remote gripe I had with the game is that my experience was a little buggy. Given how ambitious a project like this is, especially for an indie studio, some glitches were to be expected, and it was nothing game-breaking, although I've seen online some people were not as lucky. In my case, they normally occurred when I did something I probably wasn't meant to do anyways. Like here I wasn't able to retrieve a necessary item to progress because I had previously stamped the area it was near, or here when my camera was just screwed because I decided to run back through an area for no reason. There was a time near the start of the game where I just didn't respawn back up on the desk. Like I said, none of these are major, the game autosaves a bunch, so normally I could just quit and only have to replay like a few minutes of gameplay, if any at all, to get back to where I was. And plus, there's already been some patches that address these bugs, so yeah, as time goes on, it'll continue to be even more of a non-issue, but just something that occasionally came up. Other than that though, yeah, this game is awesome. If you're one of those people who think all modern gaming is just re-releases and sequels for the same tired franchises, well, you're kinda stupid, but if that's you, then give this game a try. It's probably one of the most unique games that's come out in 2024, probably my favorite game that's come out in 2024. I've also only played 2 games that came out in 2024. Seriously though, this game is just a sweet bundle of joy. I don't think everybody would be willing to drop $30 on it. Like I said, it's pretty short, and once you beat it, besides that art gallery, there's nothing else to do other than try to get all the achievements. If you've done that, well, at least for right now, that's the whole game. But if you've got the pockets and want to try something genuinely unique and fresh feeling, then you've got it right here. Give this Plucky Squire and his friends a chance.